Welcome to the channel. This video is about all the renowned Canadians who passed away in 1980. J. Silverheels. He was born in May 1912 and he died in March 1980. His age was 67 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian actor, athlete, descended from three Iroquois nations. He was well known for his role as Tonto, the Native American companion of the Lone Ranger. In the American Western television series The Lone Ranger, Silverheels died from a stroke. Ernest Cormier. He was born in December 1885 and he died in January 1980. His age was 94 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian engineer and architect. He spent much of his career in Montreal area designing notable examples of Art Deco architecture, including the Université de Montreal original main building, the Supreme Court of Canada building in Ottawa, and Cormier House, his home in Montreal's Golden Square Mile. Harold Connolly. He was born in September 1901 and he died in May 1980. His age was 78 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian journalist, newspaper editor, and politician who served as the 15th Premier of Nova Scotia in 1954. He served as Minister of Industry and Trade from 1945 to 1950. Sato Fournier. He was born in February 1908 and he died in July 1980. His age was 72 at the time of his death. He served as the mayor of Montreal and was instrumental in modernizing the city during his tenure. He played a key role in various urban development projects. He had been interested in municipal politics since 1950, although he ran 5 times for mayor between 1950 and 1962. He won only once in 1957 against Jean Repos. Dorothy Stratton. She was born in February 1960 and she died in August 1980. Her age was 20 at the time of her death. Dorothy Stratton was a Canadian actress and Playboy model whose life and career were tragically cut short. Her story is remembered for its talent and potential. Unfulfilled due to her untimely death, she was killed by Paul Snider. Paul Snider. He was born in April 1951 and he died in August 1980. His age was 29 at the time of his death. He was a criminal Canadian nightclub promoter and pimp who murdered his estranged wife, Playboy model and actress Dorothy Stratton. Following her murder, Snider killed himself. Antonio Talbot. He was born in May 1900 and he died in September 1980. His age was 80 at the time of his death. Antonio was a dedicated Canadian politician whose career influenced regional development and policy. His legacy reflects his commitment to public service. He replaced Yves Prévost as interim UN leader and leader of the opposition after the latter had served in those capacities for a few months following the resignation of former Premier Antonio Barrett from the UN leadership. Richard Gavin Reid. He was born in January 1879 and he died in October 1980. His age was 101 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian politician who served as the 6th Premier of Alberta from 1934 to 1935. He was the last member of the United Farmers of Alberta to hold office, and that party's defeat at the hands of upstart Social Credit League in the 1935 election made him shortest-serving premier to that point in Alberta's history. Judy LaMarche. She was born in December 1924 and she died in October 1980. Her age was 55 at the time of her death. She was a Canadian politician, lawyer, author, and broadcaster. In 1963, she was only the second woman ever to serve as a federal cabinet minister under Prime Minister Lester Pearson. Minority governments of the middle and late 1960s. She helped push through the legislation that created the Canadian Pension Plan and Medicare. She was diagnosed with inoperable pancreatic cancer. Elsie McGill, she was born in March 1905 and she died in November 1980. Her age was 75 at the time of her death. She was a chief aeronautical engineer at Canadian Car and Foundry in Fort William, Ontario, during the Second World War. There she oversaw manufacturing of 1,451 Hawker Hurricane fighter aircrafts for Royal Canadian Air Force and the British Royal Air Force, then 835 Curtiss Hell drivers for the United States Navy, which contributed greatly to the war effort and did much to make Canada's powerhouse of aircraft manufacturing. Conn Smythe, he was born in February 1895 and he died in November 1980. His age was 85 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian businessman, soldier, and sportsman in ice hockey and horse racing. He is best known as principal owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs of National Hockey League (NHL) from 1927 to 1961 and as the builder of Maple Leaf Gardens. Smythe is also known for having served in both World Wars, organizing his own artillery battery in the Second World War. A.J.M. Smith, he was born in November 1902 and he died in November 1980. His age was 78 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian poet and anthologist. He was a prominent member of a group of Montreal poets, the Montreal Group, which included Leon Adele, Leo Kennedy, A.M. Callan, and F.R. Scott, who distinguished themselves by their modernism in culture still rigidly rooted in Victorianism. Joe Leger, he was born in April 1913 and he died in November 1980. His age was 67 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian diplomat and statesman who served as the 21st Governor General of Canada from 1974 to 1979. He was in 1973 appointed as Governor General by Queen Elizabeth II on the recommendation of Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, to replace Roland Michener as Viceroy, and he occupied the post until succeeded by Edward Schreyer in 1979. W. L. Morton, he was born in December 1908 and he died in December 1980. His age was 71 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian historian who specialized in the development of Canadian West, along with author R. M. Lower and Donald Creighton. He is regarded as one of the most dominant Canadian historians of his generation. Morton was passionate, nationalist, and conservative who fought against liberal ideals that dominated Canadian thought after 1960, when the younger generation focused more on race, class, and gender as opposed to national themes that intrigued Morton. Doris Nielsen, she was born in July 1902 and she died in December 1980. Her age was 78 at the time of her death. She was a Canadian Chinese communist politician, feminist, and teacher. She was the first member of the Communist Party of Canada to be elected to the House of Commons of Canada. Serving during the Second World War, she was the third woman elected to Canadian Parliament and the first to still be raising young children while holding political office. Jean Lesage, he was born in June 1912 and he died in December 1980. His age was 68 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian lawyer and politician. He served as the 19th Premier of Quebec from July 1966 alongside Georges-Émile Lepage, René Lévesque, and others. He is often viewed as the father of quiet revolution. His namesake of Quebec City, Jean Lesage International Airport, the main sections of Quebec's longest autoroute highway, Autoroute 20, and the provincial electoral district within Quebec City named Jean Lesage. Ethel Wilson, she was born in January 1888 and she died in December 1980. Her age was 92 at the time of her death, and she was a Canadian writer of short stories and novels. Her works include Hattie Drovel, The Innocent Traveler, Swamp Angel, and Mrs. Golightly, and other stories. Ethel Wilson's first published work appeared in 1919 as The Surprising Adventures of Peter, a children's serial that ran in the Vancouver Daily Province. Wilson is known as one of the first Canadian writers to depict the natural beauty of British Columbia. Marshall McLuhan, he was born in July 1911 and he died in December 1980. His age was 69 at the time of his death. He was a Canadian philosopher whose work is among cornerstones of the study of media theory. He studied at the University of Manitoba and the University of Cambridge. He began his teaching career as a professor of English at several universities in the United States and Canada before moving to the University of Toronto in 1946, where he remained for the rest of his life. He is known as the father of media studies. Thanks for watching the video. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day.